Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on this week's episode, when I was angry that I wasn't angry. And I realized that.
That was a big shift.
Yeah, you had to point it out to me.
Yeah, I like it.
But before we get into that, let's do these skin deep cards.
Okay.
You want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
And this is from the friendship one because we have all of them. So this is a different one. But here's the question is, what would you warn my partner about me?
All sales are final.
No takesy backsies.
What would I warn your partner about? Gosh, that would be...
Was there just a long list or is...
No, I just don't know that there would be something that I would really warn other than like the first thing that comes to my mind is like she scares easily. Like she doesn't like to be surprised.
She doesn't like to be frightened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can spook.
Yeah.
I can spook easily. Okay, I like that.
All right, my question is, okay, what do you think is my best quality that I'm not aware of?
Best quality that you're not aware of.
That one might be the hard one because people think I'm...
That you're aware. Well, I would say it leads right into our podcast today.
Okay.
Because I think that it was something you weren't aware of. I had to point it out.
Yeah.
And I would say one of them is your ability and your openness to grow. And to that's been one of the biggest things for you. I think it's just this openness, willingness to look in order to grow. And so I think today, and we'll talk about it in just a few minutes, on how there has been some exponential growth that you weren't aware of. And for me, it was like pointing it out to you was like, isn't it obvious?
No,
but it wasn't. Yeah. And that was just, your ability to grow emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah. So today, I was out doing my job cleaning pools. And I had to go to my supply house and pick up supplies. And normally, I'm pretty conversational with everybody in there. And I've been doing this for over 20 years. So I tend to know most people that go to the same, we all kind of know each other. And we generally, as pool guys, we just wave at each other when we pass each other. So I don't know, it seems kind of friendly. But today I was in the back of my truck, but I do have a cyber truck. So that's one thing that people do hate. And I do feel a little awkward doing, working in this truck, but it works. It makes perfect practical sense for me because I'm no longer spending $1,100 a month in fuel.
Yeah.
However, some people, just for whatever reason, don't like Teslas or don't like these Cybertrucks. So I'm in the back of the truck and I'm counting my gallons and just making note to figure out what I'm going to purchase inside. And this truck rolls by me that was just loading up his chemicals. But he had all of his windows rolled up and he was like in a black Toyota Tacoma or something. And the windows were tinted. But as he was driving by, he had like like a speakerphone or a microphone, like some way
like a PA system.
Like a PA system on his truck. First of all, that's the first sign.
That's flag number one.
that this guy's got some emotional issues, maybe that he needs to be heard. He doesn't feel heard, I think. We all need this. So anyways,
we all want to be seen and heard.
Yeah. So I'm just, in the back of my truck and I'm counting and my son is in the front seat. Now he's not a kid. He's 18 already. So, he's my kid. And really loudly, the guy says like, get that fucking refrigerator thing out of here. Get a real fucking truck. And then he uses the N-word and he says, what the N-word but like casually in it as he was, blasting me, berating me about my Cybertruck. And I looked and the first thing I thought was like, do I know this guy? I must know this guy that he's talking to me like this. And then he said something again. He was like, yeah, I'm talking to you, get a real fucking truck and something like that. And then he said the N-word again. And then there was a guy in the parking lot that was sitting in his car and he happened to work there. And he was looking at me and he goes, yeah, I don't know. That was weird. And I was like, yeah, who is that guy? But my first thing was, I was like, I was kind of laughing about it internally. I was like, yeah, it is a refrigerator. I can laugh at myself, and it is a little ridiculous,
Mm-hmm.
However, but when he used the racial slurs, and I'm a white guy, or I'm white and Filipino, so there's no reason to use that for me. And I don't believe this person was black or in the realm of the possibility that he could use that term.
Yeah.
Definitely was not. So that's it. Just kind of, when I walked in the store, I was kind of just weirded out, and I started to get kind of angry, that I wasn't angry. I was like, well, who is that guy? And I was like, well, internally my own thoughts were like, well, afterwards, and I realized, I was like, well, why didn't I say something back? And that was wrong, and everything he said. But I just realized that, it didn't really affect me the way that I thought. But I was angry that I didn't
Yeah. You didn't go back to old, because I'll tell you, if that had happened 2 years ago, there would have been, at the very least, a verbal altercation.
Or something thrown at that dude's truck.
Yes. That would have not have just passed by and you going, I wonder what that's about.
I would have said, what the, did you say?
Yeah. I mean, when you were telling me and you're like, yeah, and I'm thinking, hello, that was like a really big moment of, growth, like to see growth in you.
Well, that was what was weird, because I showed up today and you were like, well, how was your day? And I said, well, here's a weird story. And I basically said the story. And then you said, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you're right. Why didn't I celebrate? Now, I'm not perfect. I still get angry at things. But that is something on the extreme that normally would have tipped me and put me in a really bad place. And probably violence would have happened, because
at least ruined your day.
Yeah. And then I would have been all out of sorts for hours and hours, really just, not in a good place.
Yeah.
But when I told you about it, you kind of flipped it around. You were like, wow, I'm so proud of you. And then I thought, wow, I should be proud of myself. Why am I not proud of myself? I was more angry
that you weren't angry.
That I didn't get angry.
Yeah.
That I didn't defend myself somehow.
Yeah.
But really, as we were talking and as we were to kind of, being mindful about it, we were thinking, like the fact is that I didn't take it personal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I thought this would be a great topic, is because, there's so much about what we talk about with just self reflection, right? And really being able to recognize when something's triggering you because part of you thinks it's true. Yeah. Or part of you thinks whatever that message that they're trying to give, whether it's the verbal message or the message that you are being disrespected, is true. Yeah. Well, then that starts, that kind of throws it over the hill, you know, and where you can just go right over the waterfall, start following that into violence or, anger or whatever it is. And you didn't do that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is a testament to the work that you've done and the things that we talk about, of really becoming aware of the stories that we tell ourselves.
But I wasn't even aware of it until you made me aware of it.
Well,
later.
I think it's good because it's not even something, it's like that unconsciously conscious, part where you're like, you didn't have to go in and go, oh, I feel triggered. Now I got to figure out why. I need to kind of go in and see, why am I feeling this emotion? This is disrespect. Where is this coming from? Where did this originate? You just kind of went like, I wonder what's wrong with that guy.
Yeah, I think it's like a definite shift for me because it's something that I recognize. Now, I'm not a perfect person all the time and I still get angry, but that particular thing would have sent me into a totally different place.
Yeah, yeah.
And so afterwards, like, I thank you for allowing me to have this small little victory. I mean, because I think we don't really celebrate the little shifts that we, that are it's very important to recognize something like that because then it gives me another reason to kind of keep going, I think.
Yeah, it's the little shifts that add up to the big, changes.
Yeah,
the little tiny ones, the little fracturing ones that feel like nothing, but eventually you're like, yeah, I'm not getting into an altercation. I'm not, going into behavior that I regret.
Well, and I'll also maybe the next time somebody says something like that to me or does something in that type of situation, I will remember. Yeah, that I was able to handle it different. Yeah. Before. Yeah, it reminds me of, there was a woman, BK Shivani,
and she talks about like energy. So like when somebody is throwing something at you, like not physically, but they're throwing like, verbal insult or attitude or whatever that is, that there's 3 ways that it's energy that they're sending your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's 3 ways that we can deal with that energy. Mm-hmm. And one of them is to reflect it back. Mm-hmm. To just be like, oh yeah, well you have a Tacoma and you have a PA system, so obviously you've got
yeah.
So then that's just kind of just pushing back that same amount of energy, which then is just creating more of that negativity, right? Yeah. So that's an option. You can just push it all back.
That will definitely not de-escalate the situation.
No, it's going to escalate the situation.
Yeah,
nobody wins. Yeah. It might feel good in the moment, but ultimately it's not helping. And then the other thing is like you could absorb the energy. So you could just take it and be like, oh man, you're right. I got a shitty truck, or, people don't respect me. And then it just like, you just take it in, just push it into yourself. You don't reflect it back. You just absorb it in. And then maybe even you go home and you take it out on your own family or your friends or your customers, because you're just feeling really crappy, right? From what just happened, because you just had to take that in. And the other way is that you can transform it. So that energy is kind of thrown your way, and instead of absorbing it, taking it in, or reflecting it back, you transform it. So you take that energy and you change it into something else, right? She says send it out as love, and it's not like you're going to be like, hey man, I love you. Peace and love. Yeah. But what you could do is kind of laugh it off, or do what we did. We're talking about it and go, wow, that was amazing. Look what just happened for you. Look, that guy really kind of gave you a gift in being able to see how much you've grown in that way. Yeah. So ultimately we're sitting here having a podcast about it.
Make sure I thank him. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
You made me have a watershed moment. I recognize.
Think about how we're transforming it right now.
Yeah.
So that energy that was spread to you, instead of absorbing it or reflecting it back.
Yeah, literally turned into love. Yeah.
We're using it now to go, wow, that was big growth. How can we, maybe reflect that to the people who are listening, to say how what the choices are when something happens, to be able to, either reflect it back, absorb it, or transform it.
Yeah. In the moment, I was thinking, when he's like, called it a refrigerator, I was thinking, okay, I can laugh at those things, because I could say the same things.
Yeah.
And I was able to kind of just reflect in the moment. It's not. And then when he used the racial slur, it was like, none of that tags to me, and I don't even know why.
Yeah, it's also like, we talked about Greenbush.
Greenbush. Okay, tell me about the Greenbush.
So Greenbush this was something I learned with my compassion inquiry training with Gabor Mate, and he talks about like if somebody called you a Greenbush, okay, and they're like, Noel, you're a Greenbush. And what do you feel? Do you feel anything? Do you feel any activation in your body, or are you just kind of like you just kind of laughed and bewildered?
Yeah. That's how I felt today. Yeah.
Yeah. Laughed and bewildered. Because nothing that I'm saying to you about being a green bush resonates in you. You're not like, there's nothing that doesn't land anywhere in me. It doesn't strike a chord that I already have. Right. But if you already felt like, less than, disrespected, the world is against me, and somebody says something like that to you today. Yeah. And you believe it. You believe whatever it is. Yeah. Not just about the truck, but somebody speaking to you in that way is very disrespectful. And if you felt like disrespected yourself, and that's a story, that's who you are, you go around with that kind of
it would be the
narrative, running in your mind, then that would have struck that chord. And that's where now I'm going to react, because I can't not. You've just activated something in me, right? So there has to be a part of you that in some way resonates with what's being said or done in order for it to be triggered.
I know we used the term self-convicted before. Remember we talked about that? And in this way, I think if you are self-convicted, when some people say things, you could just let that roll off, because you know within yourself who you are. Yeah. And I'm trying to move closer and closer. That's the goal, to become secure.
Yeah. I think when we start to kind of go in and heal those parts of us that feel not seen, not heard, all of those things, that when something else happens in our daily life that could possibly trigger that, and you may expect it like you did today, you're like, why am I not angry? It's because none of what he said really resonated with you. It just kind of sounded silly. So there was no trigger.
Yeah, the Greenbush.
Yeah.
As opposed to
you're this, you're that, you like if I were to say to you, or if somebody were to say to me, you're a bad mother, right? It might trigger me because just inherently being a parent, you worry if you're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's a yeah. Exactly.
You know, you probably were like, I don't know, am I doing the best job I can? And so there'd have to be some self-reflection. There might be some pain that I'm feeling if somebody says that to me.
Yeah.
But if, you know, if somebody's saying something to me that I'm like, that absolutely doesn't resonate with me, I'd be more worried about them than taking it personally.
Yeah, so getting to know yourself.
Getting to know yourself very well.
And I think that's really what I've been trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, this whole past couple of years is just getting to know myself.
Yeah.
And you think that you know yourself, you know, we say that a lot. You think that you know yourself, but knowing why you are the way you are, why experiences that have happened to you get stuck in you and you need to process these things and they come out in weird ways.
Yep.
You know, I really didn't buy into that, but now that I do see the advantage because doing the breath work and the daily stuff and
feeling
it. And today I was moving through a lot of emotions. We just got off of a holiday weekend and all these things. And I wouldn't say that I was exactly balanced.
Yeah.
During that time. But yeah, afterwards I was like, I think maybe, just knowing that there's bigger things going on, you know, sometimes perspective, because being, I think, imbalanced or in a stressful situation in life normally would put me in a place where I make poor choices.
Like you're on tilt.
Yeah, because I'm already on tilt. Yeah. Where now I feel like I have a little bit more grace where I'm like, well, that's not the biggest thing.
Yeah, you've got a little more leeway. You kind of broaden your perspective on who you are and what's going on.
I don't tilt as easy.
No. Well, I think that goes back to, you know, really like not taking things personally. You know, like knowing that nothing is personal. And we've talked about that before too with like Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 Agreements. And I love his explanation of not taking things personally. Yeah. Because I think when I read that book years ago, I was like, okay, I kind of took it as a superficial level. Like, oh, it's not personal. You know, whatever you're saying to me, you're not, or whatever you're doing to me, it's not personal to me. It's not like a personal attack.
Yeah, that's hard to do.
But it goes much deeper.
Yeah.
You know, because it's about personal freedom. It's about happiness. You know, because when you are taking things personal, that's not freedom. That's actually bondage. You know?
Well, when you're in the middle of a lot of self-judgment.
Yeah, you assume everything is about you.
Yeah.
So whatever somebody's behavior is that's going on, you're like, I must have done something wrong. Or they must see something wrong with me. Because a lot of people we're inherently walking around thinking something is wrong with us. So as soon as something in our outside environment seems to affirm that, we immediately attach to it.
How is it different once you're trying to walk mindfully? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think when you really kind of hone in on the concepts of like nothing is personal, and there isn't anything that is an exception to that. Well,
but sometimes, you know, walking in mindfulness, I feel like I'm much more sensitive to things, and now that I'm, you know, finding these ways that I feel, I don't know, it's more difficult to stay balanced.
Well, when you say to stay balanced, because something like how does mindfulness and being sensitive and staying in balance, what does that mean for you? Like something happens and then it throws you off balance?
Yeah, it just triggers me to go out of balance and start to react rather than respond.
But do you take that time of reaction, you know, going and reacting directly with the person or the incident that's happening, or do you go, oh man, there's going to be something I need to deal with internally?
Now it's more internally.
Okay, so that's not an easy road, and it's why a lot of people don't do this.
The observer,
right? But it takes time, and it takes repetition, and pretty soon you're cleaning out a lot of that stuff that you don't have to do it all the time, just like what happened today. So I think that you definitely get more sensitive because when something happens, you realize there's a part of you that's not free. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I just say it because it gets harder when I started to become mindful because I start paying attention to all these triggers.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It gets harder because you have work.
Yeah. And then it's in the beginning, it's so hard and you're like, dude, why? Now I'm feeling everything and now everything's super hard. But today was a little different because I was feeling particularly imbalanced. But this happened and I was okay with it. I kind of let the shit just roll.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason you do this work.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's because you have to do the hard stuff first, which is to look at yourself. So 2 years ago that happens.
Yeah, I've
You
done
get triggered.
doing a lot of self-convicting.
Yep. You
owning my shit.
2 years ago that happens, you react immediately, you have a verbal altercation, and then you're like, dang, but I know better.
Yeah.
I know this is really about, a feeling inside of me. I've got to go kind of dig at that and work on it and kind of clear it out. Mm-hmm. But now you're here 2 years later
Today
after having done that kind of that work many, many times over. Mm-hmm. And you just become more clear so that you can take the imbalance of life a little bit easier, and something gets thrown at you. You're not automatically just jumping over that waterfall. Mm-hmm. You have a little bit more space within yourself to be able to respond, which is what you did.
Yeah.
You didn't react. So the time of spending it being sensitive and it being hard that's the work. That's part of the work.
Yeah.
And why do you do it? It's so that you don't constantly have to be in that reactive mode or a numbing mode.
Yeah.
Or a running mode.
Yep.
It's being able to just be present with what is, and then being able to go, yeah, it's not about me.
Yeah, and celebrating these small times.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so thankful to you, because I otherwise, if I hadn't told you, I was kind of, maybe I was telling you to get some sympathy, like, oh, look at what happened today. And then it was like, oh, it was the best gift.
Oh man, when I was listening to you, I'm like, this is amazing. Also, a PA system on someone's car is just kind of, unless you're a cop, ridiculous. Yeah. But, to me, it was like, this is a win. How do you not see this as a win? And then it was like, oh yeah, it is. It's not easy to get to that point where you're not reacting to things.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the years of work that you've been doing. Mm-hmm. No, right? You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. For sure, there's times I still feel reactive, but I think one of the main things that you exemplified today is the concept of not taking things personal. Mm. And I think that if anything at all that somebody can do to regain their personal power is that very thing, is don't take things personally, right? Because it's just, if not, you can avoid unnecessary suffering. Mm-hmm. You can have empowerment in yourself because you regain your power, by not reacting, and really instead going, to the situation or to the person is like, are you okay? Or like, what's going on? Because
we talked about that also.
This is not me.
The response to somebody to de-escalate, would be, are you okay?
Are you okay? I mean, if somebody's kind of reacting with you or like, insulting you or going off on you,
had I had the opportunity to tell that guy, is everything okay with you?
Are you okay today? Because I don't know what that's about. Yeah. And then just kind of like, there's nowhere for it to go. It's just kind of bouncing off. You're not absorbing it. You're transforming it. You're not reflecting it back. Those are all choices. But instead it's your own personal power, to regain that. So,
yeah. And I think it's difficult because I was trying to also think about other times like that, because I was curious, and even asking you, were there moments where you realized you've shifted or you didn't get as angry as you have in the past? And I think it's probably a good exercise to start to recognize those things in ourselves, to celebrate those little personal goals.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to personally start paying attention to that, because I didn't really, but I think, trying to go along with the positivity train.
Yeah.
and the positive triggers instead of the negative triggers.
Yeah.
Celebrating the small things like this for me today. That it was a small thing, but it was a big win overall, because it's something that I can celebrate within myself.
So now you think moving forward, it would almost be like you're looking to see, like, I wonder if it'll happen again and what I do. Like it's almost like an experiment.
Yeah, like see what you can throw at me next and see how calm I could be. Yeah. I mean, it could be a challenge like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we fall off, especially if we're not balanced. But I think that it is a big win. When you start to like free yourself from the opinions of others, free yourself from whatever situational reactions are going on around you, there is a sense of peace that you have knowing, like, for the most part, most situations, any situation that you could come in, that's always a choice. You have the choice between both, or of all three: reflect, absorb, or transform. Yeah. And so at any moment, if something is coming at you, a situation that is probably meant to throw you off balance, it's like kind of, getting kind of excited, like, ooh, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to maintain my power, my personal power, my freedom.
Using that energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just a few different ways of looking at it, you know?
Yeah. If you don't take it personal, I mean, using the rain technique, even within that, you know, recognize what's going on within me, whatever, acknowledging, oh, well, yeah, that's not true within me.
Yeah. I think rain technique is what got you to this point.
I thought that's what I was
the
thinking.
recognize, allow, inquire, and nurture.
Yep.
You do that enough time. You make it rain enough times.
Make it rain. What kind of club is this?
We're making it rain. Today I had to make it rain a lot.
Yeah, making it rain.
I'm making it rain so many times that I'm starting to cleanse and clear. And so when life throws things at you, that you can just show up and be more present. So I'm proud of you, brother.
Thank you. I'm proud of me too, actually. You know, once you said it, I was thinking, oh, really? Yeah. You know what? Why am I angry that I'm angry
that I'm not angry?
I didn't. I was, you know, ruminating, thinking, should I have done something? But I was like, but nothing he said really. Yeah, nothing landed.
Yeah, that's the ego. You know.
Yeah, it was the ego part.
Ego's used to being in charge in those moments, and instead it was just, like you kept saying, I thought that's great. You know what I like to say when something happens that's kind of meant to throw me off, or somebody's saying something kind of rude, or I don't know, it feels like it's meant to try to throw me, is just to go, interesting. That's interesting.
That's interesting.
That's interesting.
We got to find these passive, you know, be very passive. Just let that, you know, road rage for me now, I clap.
Yeah.
When somebody, instead of flicking somebody off, I just clap.
Yeah.
Because then what are they going to say?
Is that reflecting though? Is that pushing it back, or is it?
It may be, you know.
It's a little bit like, bravo. That's like
yeah, it's sarcasm.
It's sarcasm in a clap.
It's sarcasm in a clap. Yeah, you know what? God,
it is.
And sarcasm is a form of anger.
I feel like that's not as big of a.
Yeah, I got to even pull back from that. Jeez.
Yeah, just go. Interesting. You must be having a bad day. I hope that it gets better for you. And you think about your ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for whatever put you in a situation today that you feel like you needed to do that.
Yeah, I love ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you.
Yep.
You know, and those, I mean, that's the whole thing, is just thinking about whatever is coming at you. You don't know where that originated. It didn't originate with you. And so assume that and let the rest go.
Well, that trigger was a treasure.
Yes, definitely.
All right. That's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.